I never imagined that one small mistake could unravel everything. I was always the kind of person who liked to think things through, to carefully calculate my actions, my words, my movements. But it turns out, no matter how meticulous you are, there's always that one moment that can change everything. And for me, that moment came in the form of a simple text message. At first, I didn't even realize what had happened. The message came in late one night. I was lying in bed, scrolling through my phone as I usually did before sleep. Dan, my husband, was next to me, already half asleep. I didn't pay him much attention. He'd been working late, as usual, and had barely spoken to me all day. The gap between us had been growing for months, and I didn't know how to fix it. He didn't seem to notice that something was wrong, and I didn't have the energy to try and fix things anymore. So I let it slide. The phone buzzed in my hand. A message from Dan. My heart skipped. But it wasn't from Dan. It was from someone else. A name I didn't recognize. My thumb hovered over the screen, and a sudden feeling of unease washed over me. I had no idea why I was even thinking about opening it. The message wasn't meant for me. I knew that deep down, but curiosity got the better of me, and before I could stop myself, I opened it. Can't wait to see you tomorrow, baby. I need you. I miss your touch. Don't forget to wear that dress. It drives me wild. I froze. The words on the screen were like a slap to the face. My heart sank as the realization set in. This message wasn't meant for me. It was meant for someone else. I could feel the blood draining from my face as I stared at the screen. My hands began to shake and my mind raced. What was I supposed to do? Why would Dan send something like this to someone else? For a moment, I wanted to pretend I hadn't seen it. I wanted to erase the memory of the words and go back to pretending everything was fine, but I couldn't. I was already too deep. The message was staring at me, mocking me, reminding me that my perfect world was about to come crashing down. I glanced over at Dan, who was still half asleep beside me. He was completely unaware of what had just happened. He'd been cheating on me. For how long? I didn't know, but the weight of the realization hit me like a ton of bricks. I was a fool. How had I missed this? He had been distant, sure. The late nights at work, the excuses about being too tired to spend time together, the lack of affection, but I had convinced myself that it was just the stress of work. I had believed him when he said things were fine, but they weren't, not at all. The worst part? I didn't even know who this woman was. The message didn't give me a name. It didn't say anything that could help me understand what was really going on, but I knew enough to know that my life was about to change. I debated what to do next. Should I confront him? Should I ask him about the text? Or should I just keep quiet and wait to see if he would tell me himself? The thought of confronting him made my stomach turn. What if I was wrong? What if this was just a misunderstanding? I didn't want to accuse him without knowing the full story, but I couldn't ignore what I had seen. I couldn't pretend it wasn't there. I decided to wait until morning. I would try to sleep, but I knew it would be impossible. The words from that message kept replaying in my mind, each one like a stab in the chest. The night dragged on, but I finally managed to doze off. When I woke up, Dan was already up and getting ready for work. He didn't seem any different, still the same distant version of himself that I had gotten used to. But something had shifted inside me. The bond between us felt broken, like a thread that had been severed, leaving a gaping hole where our connection once was. "Morning," he said, his voice flat. He didn't even look at me as he walked past. It felt as if I was invisible. "Morning," I muttered, my voice barely audible. I wanted to say something. I wanted to ask him, demand to know what was going on, but I couldn't. I wasn't sure I was ready for the truth, and a part of me wasn't sure I wanted to hear it. What if he admitted it? What would I do then? He kissed me on the cheek as he grabbed his coat. "I'll be home late tonight. I have a meeting with a client." "Right," I said, watching him leave. As the door closed behind him, the reality of the situation settled in. He was still lying to me, still pretending, but I couldn't just sit back and let this happen. I needed answers. I deserved answers. The day was a blur. I spent the morning pacing, trying to figure out what to do. I thought about confronting him, about going to his office or calling him, but I knew that wasn't the right way. I needed proof. I needed to know exactly what was going on before I did anything rash. So I did the only thing I could think of. I went through his phone. It wasn't something I ever thought I would do. I trusted him, or I had at least. But now trust felt like a distant memory. The phone was the key to everything. I had to know the truth, no matter how much it hurt. I found the message thread. It wasn't hard to find. His phone was unlocked, just like always. The conversation between him and the other woman was right there, plain as day. Her name was Emily. The messages were full of the same kind of affection, the same promises, the same longing that had been in the text message. They had been talking for months. He'd been meeting her in secret, lying to me about his late nights, his business trips, and I had been so blind. I hadn't wanted to see the signs. I had made excuses for him, convinced myself that everything was fine. But it wasn't fine. He wasn't fine. Tears filled my eyes as I read the messages. My heart shattered with every word. They talked about their plans, their future, about how they couldn't wait to be together, how much he missed her, how much he wanted her, and I was left with nothing but the wreckage of a marriage I thought was solid. When Dan came home that evening, I was waiting for him. I couldn't keep pretending anymore. I couldn't live in this lie any longer. He walked in, looking surprised to see me sitting there waiting. "Kate, what's wrong?" he asked, but I could hear the unease in his voice. "Don't play dumb with me," I said, my voice trembling. "I know about Emily. I know what you've been doing." His face went pale. "What are you talking about?" "Don't lie to me, Dan," I said, holding up his phone. "I saw the messages. I saw everything." For a moment, he just stood there, staring at me. His expression was a mix of shock and guilt. Then he sighed, running a hand through his hair. "I didn't want you to find out like this," he said, his voice soft. "But I've been seeing her for a while. It wasn't supposed to happen. I never meant for it to go this far." I felt a wave of nausea wash over me. He had betrayed me. He had betrayed everything we had built together. "Why?" I asked, my voice breaking. "Why would you do this to me? To us?" "I don't know," he said, looking away. Things have been different between us for a while. I didn't know how to fix it. And when I met Emily, it felt like everything I was missing. "Missing?" I asked, my anger rising. "What about our marriage? What about me? What about the family we've built? I never meant for you to find out like this," he repeated. "I'm sorry, Kate. I really am. But I can't undo what I've done." I could feel my world collapsing around me. I had trusted him. I had given him everything, and he had thrown it all away for someone else. The realization of the depth of his betrayal hit me all at once. "I want you to leave," I said, my voice steady but filled with pain. "I need space. I need to think about what I want, and I need to figure out how to move forward." Dan didn't say anything else. He just turned and left, and as I watched him go, I realized that I had just taken the first step toward reclaiming my life. The wrong text message had destroyed everything, but in a way, it also set me free. I didn't know what the future held or what would happen with Dan, but I knew I couldn't keep living a lie. And for the first time in a long time, I was ready to face the truth.